This wonderful event. Welcome everyone to Book Passage. My name is Johanna Rupp, your host, and today we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Annie Barrows, New York Times, yes. One of our absolute favorite authors here really at Book Passage, it's true. She's New York Times best-selling co-author of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
You got all those words.
I know, I've been practicing. She's also the author of the beloved Ivy and Bean series. This is one of my daughter's very favorite books. The Magic Half and its sequel, Magic in the Mix. And today we are celebrating her latest novel, The Truth According to Us, an evocatively written book that explores the deeply felt intricacies of small town life through the eyes of three extraordinary characters. The Washington Post writes, "The Truth According to Us is as delightfully eccentric as Guernsey, yet refreshingly different. It's an epic but intimate family novel with richly imagined characters, an intriguing plot, and the social sensibilities you would expect from a story set in the South." So please join with me in a very warm welcome for Annie Barrows. Thank you all my friends who are here. This is going to be the greatest event ever because I know no matter what I do, even if I fall off this podium, you people are going to be nice to me. Oh wait, except for my cousin Liz right there. So, it's all true. I am Annie Barrows, and this is my new book, The Truth According to Us. And this book is set in 1938 in the small town of Macedonia, West Virginia. And right about here, I usually get the question, why West Virginia? My editor put it like this: why West Virginia? And the answer is because West Virginia is the center of the world. It is the most exciting, mysterious, and dramatic place in the world. And I know this because I grew up with one branch of my family from West Virginia. And to be clear, many of them are in this audience, but to be clear, this is the branch of the family that never stops talking. And they talk in stories. Everything is a story. You never, ever, ever in my family get a simple answer to a simple question. You cannot find out a fact to save your life. And if you're a kid, the way this plays out is that, let's say you come into the house and you have a normal kid question, kid complaint, kid issue, like, for instance, my Barbie's head fell off. Here's the answer that you get to that. When I was 9 years old, I got diphtheria, and they burnt all my toys. For instance, you say, I hate this, I'm not going to eat it. Some poor little children in Martinsburg, West Virginia, eat only okra and lard sandwiches. Let's say you come home and you say, Matt Johnson was really mean to me today. My uncle, Mr. Puckett, was the meanest man in Martinsburg, West Virginia. He'd sit on his porch in a rocking chair. He had a big cane, and if you came near him, he'd swing the cane as hard as he could to break your ankles. This is just the tip of the iceberg, people. Martinsburg, West Virginia is a place where the gypsies burnt down the funeral parlor. Martinsburg, West Virginia is a place where the bootlegger had 1,000,000 pockets on the inside of his coat, and he kept bunches of bananas in them. Martinsburg, West Virginia, my mother got poison oak inside her nose. Martinsburg, West Virginia, my Aunt Mary Ann's first date was with a boy who had 7 older sisters who had tried to bury him alive when he was 5 years old. Everything exciting happened in Martinsburg, West Virginia. I had to grow up in boring old San Anselmo, California, where nothing fun ever happened. But I did actually manage grow up, despite my sorrow and jealousy. I managed to carry on and grow up. And once I grew up, I became an editor. I was an editor for about 15 years until I finally figured out that writers were having a lot more fun than editors. And at that point, I decided I'd become a writer. And in order to do that, I went off and got myself a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. Now, the theory about getting a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing is that you're going to become, a better writer. Who knows about that? But you were introduced to a lot of very interesting ideas in a master's program. And one of them is that the writer is a creature whose the self is the treasure. My perspective, my experiences, my individuality is the treasure from which the work is made. That's a very big deal in fine arts Masters of Fine Arts programs. The idea that the voice of the writer is something that can never be replicated. Nobody can copy it. It's unique, and its value cannot be overstated. That's one interesting idea I encountered in the MFA program. Another interesting idea I encountered in the MFA program is that the most American story that it is possible to tell is the story of the hero, it's usually a guy, who leaves Ma and Pa and domesticity, usually the little woman too, behind, and travels out into the plains, in the wilds of America, where he then kills something or other. It could be an animal, it could be an Indian, it could be a bad guy, but something has to die at his hands. And after that, he is then free to build himself, to become entirely a self-determined person. That's the great American story. That sounded really, really weird to me. So I avoided the whole issue by becoming a children's book writer, which was great. I really liked that. At that point, I was hanging out only with children. I had very little contact with adults, and I do think that 7 years old is pretty much the pinnacle of life, and everything goes downhill afterwards. So I was great. It was tons of fun. I love writing for children. I planned for that to be my career. And then, in the middle of 2006, everything changed. In the middle of 2006, my Aunt Mary Ann, part of the lucky family that grew up in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and was one of my main storytellers in life, my Aunt Mary Ann Schaefer completed her first book. It was called the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And not only did she complete it, she got it accepted for publication. And this was a great and wonderful moment in her life and our lives, because we all knew that it was Mary Ann's lifelong dream to write a book, as she said, that somebody would like enough to want to publish. And it had happened. And it was a great moment in our lives, of the life of the family, because we knew she was the best storyteller in the world, and now everybody else was going to find out too. And it was thrilling, and we were flushed with pride, and it was wonderful. And then, very shortly after the book was accepted for publication, Mary Ann fell ill. And when, a few months later, the editor came back to her with rewrites, fair number of rewrites, she did not feel that she was well enough to start on it again, and she called me up and said, "You are the other writer in the family. Can you finish this for me?" And I said, "Don't give the matter another thought. I will take care of it. Don't worry about a thing, Mary Ann." And inside, I was thinking, this is impossible. This is Mary Ann's voice. I'm not Mary Ann. I'm Annie Barrows. How could I write Mary Ann's book? How can her story be written by me? The artist is the individual. The treasure is in the individuality, and we are all unique. We are separate, we are different. I can't do this. But I had said yes, so I had to. Well, first I had to procrastinate. That was the first line of defense. That didn't go on for very long. And pretty soon I sat down and began to work on the manuscript. And I have an extremely clear recollection of the first day that I began to work on Mary Ann's book. I was typing along for a couple of hours, and I looked up and I thought, this is not going to be impossible. This is going to be wonderful. Because Mary Ann's storytelling was the wallpaper of my life. I grew up hearing her and my mom tell stories. I knew exactly how that voice would sound. I knew how that story would go. I would read a sentence and I'd think, oh, the next thing that needs to happen is it needs to go in this direction. It was fabulous. It was a fabulous experience. It was like sitting in a room with Mary Ann, which of course I had done for many years. And as I was working on it, I began to think that this whole idea of the utter isolation in individuality of the artist was suspicious. And I began to think that there is another major American story where you don't leave your past behind, you bring it with you, and that's the art. So I worked along on this book, and it was a wonderful experience. And Mary Ann did not live to see the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society get published. She died 5 months before the book came out, which drives me crazy. And you know, she did not get to see this book become a major international bestseller in 33 different countries and 27 languages. She did not get to see people love this book like they've never loved any book they read before. She didn't get to stand beside me about 3 weeks ago when a woman said, I'm dyslexic and the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society is the first book I ever finished in my life, and I had to stop everything and read it for 24 hours. I called in sick, but then I decided that the character of Julia wouldn't like me if I lied, so I called back and said, I'm not really sick. I'm reading this book and I'm not going to come in until I'm done. So it kills me that Mary Ann didn't get to see what this book meant to people, and I know she's up there somewhere seeing it all, and that's great and everything, but I would much prefer it if she was right here seeing it. But very shortly after the book came out, November, actually the day after Obama was elected president, I went on a pilgrimage with my mother and my cousins, both of whom are here today, Mary Ann's daughters, back to the center of the world. Back to the source of everything good, the most exciting, dramatic, and mysterious place in the world, Martinsburg, West Virginia. We're from, here, so we had to fly across the country. Do you need a tissue, Liz?
Just making her the dyslexic story was very sweet.
Too. We had to fly across the country, and then we had to get in a car and drive over hill and dale, and then, we drove over that last dale and up the hill, and we got to Martinsburg, West Virginia. Can I say bleak? Is that okay with you, Mom? I mean, it's not, you all have been in towns like this. It's an old town. It's got a few nice old buildings and a lot of not so nice old buildings. It's got a lot of empty storefronts. It's got a few strip malls. It's got some nice neighborhoods, and it's got a lot of not so good neighborhoods. Everybody's been in a town like this before. Bleak, unremarkable. But as I was walking through Martinsburg, West Virginia with my mom, here's what happened. She would say, oh, that's where we lived when I persuaded Mary Ann that she needed to learn how to jump into her clothes, and she stood on the side of her bed and jumped off head first and knocked herself out. Oh, look, there's the funeral parlor that the gypsies burnt down. Oh, look right over there. That's the quarry where the preacher used to come to town and walk on water until my uncles took the board out from under the water and drowned. Oh, look, that's where the bootlegger used to hang out when he was selling his liquor, and you'd go up and maybe you'd get a banana and maybe you'd get some liquor. And I realized what the truth was. The truth is that there is another part of Martinsburg. Actually is the center of the world. It actually is the most exciting, most dramatic, most mysterious place in the world. The stories create the reality. The stories make an alternate history that is just as real as bleak. And I thought to myself at that point, oh yeah, this is the story I want to tell. So I did. Now I'm going to read you a little bit from this book. Not very much. I'm going to read to you from the first two paragraphs of the opening. Author hydration is important. The speaker here is Willa Romaine. In 1938, the year that I was 12, my hometown of Macedonia, West Virginia, celebrated its sesquicentennial, a word I thought had to do with fruit for the longest time. In school, we commemorated the occasion as we commemorated most occasions, with tableaux, one for each of the major events in Macedonia's history. There weren't many, hardly enough to stretch out over 8 grades, but the teachers eked them out as best they could. If it hadn't been for the war between the states, I don't know what they would have done. When Virginia seceded from the Union, Western Virginia got mad and seceded right back into it, all except for 4 little counties, one of them ours, that stuck out their tongues at West Virginia and declared themselves part of the Confederacy. A piece of sass with long consequences in the way of road paving and school desks. Tucked up in a crook between the Potomac and the Shenandoah, Macedonia was a junction for generals and railroads alike, and by the time Lee had hung up his sword at Appomattox, the town had changed hands 47 times, 6 of them in one day. Our teachers dearly loved to get up a scene of the townspeople stuffing their Confederate flags up the chimney as the Union troops marched in and then yanking them back out again as the troops departed. The 4th, 5th, and 6th graders got the war scenes, and the 7th and 8th graders got the short end of the stick, because not a thing happened in Macedonia after 1865 except the roundhouse blowing up and the American Everlasting Hosiery Company opening its doors. Half the town worked in that company, and the other half wished it did, but there was not much about the American Everlasting Hosiery Company that looked good in a tableau. Sometimes the teachers gave up and killed 2 birds with 1 stone by making the 7th graders march across the stage waving socks while the 8th graders sang the Star-Spangled Banner behind them. In 1938, though, the 8th grade hit paved dirt because Mrs. Roosevelt drove through town. She stopped at the square, took a drink from our Sulphur Spring water fountain, made a face, and drove away. That was plenty for a tableau, except that instead of making a face, the 8th grade Mrs. Roosevelt said, "The people of Macedonia are lucky to receive the benefits of healthful mineral water." My sister Bird and I laughed so hard we got sent out into the hall. Now the other little bit I'm going to read you comes from another speaker. This speaker is Miss Layla Beck, who is the daughter of a senator and a debutante, who has recently refused to marry the man her father wants her to marry and has therefore been kicked out of the house. Much to her complete horror, she's being forced to take a job, and the job that is being presented to her by her uncle, Ben Beck, is a job on the Federal Writers Project. She's being sent to the town of Macedonia to write their history book for the sesquicentennial. She's appalled. May 27th, 1938. Dear Ben, let's pause for a moment and discuss this calmly. Just the 2 of us, without Father's lash of fire cracking over our heads. Now, Ben, I don't know what Father's got on you, but it must be something pretty awful to bring you to the point of hiring me. For the WPA, too. Have you killed someone? Even if you have, there must be a better way to expiate your crimes than putting me on the Writers Project, which is nearly a crime in itself. Now, I certainly understand that if Father is twisting your arm, you have to give me some kind of job. I understand and I sympathize. But consider, Father will be perfectly satisfied if you put me in a dainty little secretarial position, and so will I. Simply by offering me a temporary place in your office, you will meet Father's requirements and your arm will be your own again. There is no need to go to extremes. I refer to West Virginia. Sending me to West Virginia is extreme, not to mention ostentatious, toadying, and mean. Yesterday afternoon, after I had got over my first shock at your letter, I betook myself to the library to read up on the Writers Project. You see, I do know where the library is. And I discovered that your arguments in favor of West Virginia, state flower, the rhododendron, are completely erroneous. Yes, I was born in Washington, D.C., but it's ridiculous to say that I'm obliged to work in the state closest to my birthplace. You made that up. You know you did. Do you know what the motto of West Virginia is? It's Montani Semper Liberi. Mountaineers are always free. Need I say more? Do you and Father think that by packing me off to the mountain state, you will turn me into a fresh-faced, wholesome girl in ankle socks bounding over the rocky heights? You're mad. You'll drive me to drink, and in West Virginia, the drink is probably moonshine, which will rot my entrails and make me blind. Not only will I be miserable, I'll be terrible. I'll be the worst researcher in the history of the Writers' Project, and that includes the 70-year-old Stalinist morphine addict you told me about. Can you picture me interviewing farmers' wives and coal miners, asking tactful questions about baths and head lice, counting pigs and dogs and babies? Honestly, Ben, they'll shoot me, and I won't blame them if they do. Please reconsider. You're my uncle. You're supposed to dote on me, and I'm supposed to be the sunshine of your lonely bachelorhood. Perhaps I haven't lived up to my end recently, but give me a chance. Indulge me this one last time. Take me off the West Virginia project and give me a job in your office, and I swear to you I will be the best secretary you ever saw. I will arrive in your office at 8 in the morning. I will type my fingers to the bone. I will be lovely on the telephone. I will contemplate serious topics. I will be a credit to you. Just don't send me to West Virginia. Please. Your loving and usually obedient niece, Layla. May 28th. Layla. Do you realize that nearly 1/4 of the employable citizens of this country are out of work? Do you realize that I receive dozens of letters each week from diligent, well-educated men and women imploring me for a job, any job on the project? These people are desperate, Layla. They've been unemployed for so long they've forgotten what it's like to work. They've sold everything they owned for pennies. They go to bed hungry, inside if they're lucky, outside if they're not, and they wake up hungry. They've been wearing the same suit of clothes for years, sponged off each night because if they scrub it on a washboard, the cloth will shred to rags. Their children are sick because they don't get enough to eat, and they're dirty because they have no place to wash. These are people who never thought they'd have to beg, and here they are, begging me for a job that won't pay them enough to keep food in their stomachs. There is an opening on the West Virginia project. I have, against my better judgment, given you that position. Be grateful or be damned. Then. Now this is your part. Now you can ask me questions, personal questions. You can ask me any questions. I don't advise asking me about math, but you can if you want. Oh, now come on, Mom.
You told me to keep quiet.
I said she couldn't deny anything. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever considered acting?
You know, I would never be an actress, but all of this comes from being a children's book writer, because you really, if you're going to do a reading in front of people who are crying and squirming and, you know, getting sick and really have something much more pressing to do than listen to a grown-up yet again, you have to be pretty, you know, animated, let's say. I can't tell you how much more well-behaved you are. Nobody's crying yet. Yes, ma'am. How long did it take me to write this book? 6 years. It took me a very long time. And again, this takes me back partially to writing for children. When you write for children, you're on a very tight line. In general, I have 8,500 words, and so I have to know exactly what's happening the entire time. But they asked me to write a grown-up book, and I said, all right, how big can it be? And the editor said, it can be any size you want. And I ran amok. I know I did. The first couple of years I spent writing about any character who interested me in Macedonia. Anybody who walked down the street in Macedonia, West Virginia, I wrote about that person, and I ended up with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And then my editor called me up and very delicately informed me that I didn't have a plot. I didn't know I was supposed to make it a plot. So that we spent a lot of time dealing with that problem. There's a plot now. There's a plot, and I don't follow every single human being who ever lived in Macedonia for the entire duration of its history. So it did take me quite some time to figure that out. Yes, Neil.
So your career writing children's books were when your children were small,
Yes.
and now your children are more grown up. Has that made it influenced you in your change of career?
Well, to a certain degree, it has. Although I don't want to stop writing for children. I might write for older children. But I really do think that 7 is the pinnacle of life, and I really do like spending time with children. It is harder now because I don't have quite so many little sprouts running all over my house. But I get a lot of people are. I travel around the country to talk to kids a lot, and everybody thinks I'm really nice, and that's really nice of me. But nonsense! I'm doing it. I'm stealing. While I go there, I steal their ideas, I steal their expressions, and I use them in my posts. So I intend to keep writing for kids. I might even write for teenagers.
Good.
Yes, ma'am?
Have you spoken in West Virginia?
It's funny. It's funny. They aren't including West Virginia. I'm not sure. I think the part about bleak might be. I would change that up. I would be very tactful. I don't know exactly what I would say, but I would be very tactful. They have recently sent me the whole last week. I've been in the deep South. Like I've been in Mobile and Atlanta and Florida, which is some sort of weird place that's not the South, and Nashville. But down there, this book is about Yankees. So they don't consider West Virginia the South at all. So they didn't take it personally when I said it was bleak. But I don't know what I would do if I went to West Virginia. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how you created your main characters?
I'd love to talk about how I created my main characters. There are 3 main characters. We have 3 very important characters in this book. One is our wonderful Willa, who starts off the book, and then there is Miss Layla Beck, who comes to town to write the history, and then there's another main character, Jottie Romaine, who is Willa's aunt, and the person who owns the house that Layla eventually comes to board in. And as Willa is a very typical 12-year-old. At the age of 12, she has discovered what pretty much every 12-year-old discovers, which is that the grown-ups are keeping things from her. And so she sets out to discover all the secrets that the grown-ups have been keeping from her. And Layla is coming to town to write the history of the town, and so she too, for entirely different reasons, is setting out to discover the secrets of the town. Well, the 2 of them are working on parallel tracks, and what they discover is that Jottie and her brother Felix are at the center of the most hotly contested historical episode in the town. So Jottie is our other main character, and Willa, I love everybody in the book. I love even the most terrible people in the book. But Willa is the one I started with because I think that there is this amazing thing about 12-year-olds or people around that age, which is they still have clarity of vision. They don't have a lot of knowledge, but they have clarity, and they're about to lose it, the poor things. I mean, I think that the adolescence is basically, your mind is clouded for about 10 to 30 years. So this is sort of the last moment of clarity and of devotion and of like that pressing desire to know and the vision to see, but not probably the information to understand. And so she is a character that's very dear to my heart, and I found her voice really easy to write. Layla too, as a debutante, that was a fun voice to write. And then the most difficult one was Jottie, because she defies plot. I mean, she is the creature who is at the center of everything, and there she is, the center. The center doesn't move, so it's hard to make her come clear for me. And I would say there was about 1.5 years of the 6 years was devoted to making Jottie work. So it's been really interesting, and I feel like I know all these people, and one of the things that I did that I so enjoyed is I wrote lots and lots of stories about the older characters, the Romaine family, as children. And that was a wonderful way for me to understand who they were. None of it appears in the book, I'm sorry to say, but I had it all. It was great. It was wonderful. I loved working on that. Yes?
You mentioned perhaps writing for teenagers. And what do you attribute the popularity today of YA literature? I mean, in this digital age that we live in, return to books.
I think YA literature, I mean, it is, one answer is that we are living in a golden age of YA literature. I don't know about that. We're certainly living in a golden age of YA publishing. But here's what I really think. I think talk about plot. You know, you can sum up, the only way that I can think of to define YA literature is that you can say what it's about really quickly. It has a plot, and sometimes that's really mostly what it has, is a plot, and nobody's ashamed of it. Whereas literary fiction, it has a really tormented relationship with plot. YA fiction doesn't have a problem with plot, and so I think it's also a matter of redefinition. I think that books that 30 years ago would have been just called fiction are now called YA. And that maybe the defining bit is the plot, I'm not sure. But everybody's YA. I mean, YA seems to start at about 11 and go up to about, what do you say, 85? Yeah. YA is a very big deal. Young adult, sorry, young adult. So it's, you could call it teenager fiction, but that's not what it is. It's a very big deal, I mean, in publishing. YA sells like hotcakes, but of course that's not why I'm considering writing about it. Far above such economic considerations. Any other questions? Yes.
So what percentage of your book is based on real stories and people?
Well, what percentage of my book is based on real stories?
Do we get to answer?
No, you don't. No.
We're gonna have to answer that.
No, my family needs to just pipe down over there. Okay. Because I don't really believe in real. I mean, I think that probably if I fell off this podium and bonked myself on the head, I'd believe that I had really done that. But I think that everything in history is created. And so I believe that the idea of real versus fictional is a construct that I'm not really buying into that one. But events that may or may not have happened that I heard about when I was young, there are a lot in there. But there's also a lot I made up. And here's my problem. I can't tell the difference anymore. I called up my mom a couple weeks ago and said, so there's this piece in the book about when the prisoners broke out of the jail and swarmed upstairs to the library and barricaded themselves in and threw the library books out the window. Now, how old were you when that happened? And she said, that didn't happen. So I don't know. I've now created a whole alternate history that's in my mind. And so I can't really even say. There is, the book, one of the beginning episodes of the book is based on an event, a story that I must have heard 1,000 times growing up, and this was a great story about a day when my mom and Marianne, her little sister, were walking to school. My mom's the older sister. She was guiding Marianne to school, and as they crossed the street, a bicycle ran over my mom, and as she was lying face down in the gravel, she felt a little tap on her shoulder. It's Marianne. Marianne said, "I'll be all right." Now my mom's right over here saying, that's true. I have heard an alternate version of this story from my Aunt Marianne. So what's real? I don't know. I can't tell, and I'm not here to judge. Oh, excuse me, we have.
I had the tire tracks on.
I know. My mom's, she still has the tire tracks on the back of her knees. I'm sure you did. I'm just saying that every story is a construct, and there's many different versions of every story, and I just can't put my finger on reality hardly anywhere. Yeah, I know. This is a tough crowd. Okay, but tough. Are there any other questions out there? Oh, yes.
What have you got cooking now?
What have I got cooking now? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you. My editor says I'm not supposed to tell you, but just a hint. I've already started the next book because that's the best part. That's my favorite part. It's great coming out and talking to you, but I love writing a first draft. There's nothing like it. So I'm writing, but finally I'm writing about California. After all these years about writing, I set a lot of books in the Shenandoah Valley. It's very strange. I don't know why. It's the center of the world. But I'm finally writing about California. I'm writing a book that's half of it is set in California in the 60s and 70s, and half of it is set in Victorian England. And the two stories weave together. So it's going to be tons of fun. And I really hope it's not going to take another 6 years. Who knows? Yes.
What does your writing discipline look like?
My writing discipline, looks so much better than it used to. I really, at this point in my life, I really get to go into my office at around 9:30, and I really do get to stay there until around 3:30 or 4. And I'm writing a lot of that time. I began my life as a writer when I had very small children, and so that was a struggle. It was a struggle. I would, you have to claw the time out, and I would, set them up with babysitters. There'd be a craft and a snack, and it was like, you guys are going to be so happy. And I'd run upstairs, get in my office, close the door, and then they'd come and breathe outside my door. But now they're old. They're not anywhere near my office door, and I can actually sit down and do it. And I think that also partly because those years when I had little children, I was trying to write, so it was so hard to get the time. I have dispensed with procrastination for the most part. I've gotten through that. I think that's a stage of the writing life. My technique for making the writing, making myself sit down and begin, is to leave off someplace where I know what the next thing I'm going to write is. And even if that means I'm leaving off in the middle of a sentence, I know what the next word is, and that's enough. Sometimes I know what the whole next paragraph is. Sometimes when I'm really lucky, I know how the whole chapter is going to shape out. But I leave off at the end of the day. I leave off when I know what the next piece is, so that I sit down the next morning and I write that thing. Word, sentence, paragraph, whatever it is. And that makes it so that I don't succumb to the desire to look up my rankings on Amazon or whatever it is, that is the temptation. Oh yeah, it's sort of writing, but it's not really writing. So that it's changed a lot over the years, and I would never I wouldn't advocate taking up a writing career when you have 3-year-old children, but it did in some ways focus me a lot. Yes?
What kind of books do you read?
What kind of books do I read? Oh, I'm in paradise right now. Well, no, I can't say that. I'm on tour, which has many, many difficulties. But one of the great things about being on tour is that you're on these plane flights and you read and read and read and read. So I just finished The Color of Water, which is a great book. I finished Euphoria by Lily King, which I really enjoyed. It's a new book. It's sort of based on the life story of Margaret Mead, although with some major changes. Very interesting book. I read A Prayer for Owen Meany, which I never read. I read Kent Harriff's new book, Our Souls at Night, which is wonderful, really good. I read Kate Atkinson's new book, God in Ruins. It's the sequel to Life After Life, which I thought was a magnificent and astonishing piece of work. I had a panic attack in Tennessee. I thought I might run out of books on the plane ride home, so I had to run off to a bookstore and buy books. And I got through 2 books on the flight yesterday. They were Benediction, also by Kent Harriff, and Constellation of Vital Phenomenon. I didn't read that last year when everybody else in the United States was reading it. It's a wonderful book. So those are all the books I read in the last 3 weeks. Yeah, no, really, plane flights. Gotta love it. It's the best part. Shall we proceed to the signing portion of the entertainment? All right, thank you.